Scotty Barnes is unstoppable right now.
Batted out, denied by Scotty. Oh, Scotty Barnes!
People make fun of this guy for his stuff. He can't control off the court, but on the court, he was the best player in the series against the Cavs. Not James Harden, not Donovan Mitchell, not Evan Mobley. The reigning defensive player of the year, it was Scotty Barnes, a guy that unless you were watching the Raptors regularly this season, you probably severely underestimated, and now he's making everyone look stupid for sleeping on him. As usual, the good players up north never get any appreciation, especially from the American media. The man who is carrying Toronto on his back.
Monster slam! Scotty Barnes! It's a 2-point game!
Let's start with the numbers because they are genuinely insane. Scottie Barnes has reached 20 or more points in all 4 playoff games against the Cavaliers, every single one. He is the first Raptor to record 4 or more games of 20 plus points in the postseason since Kawhi Leonard did it 5 straight times in 2019. Let that sink in for a second. The last Raptor to do what Scottie Barnes is doing right now won a championship. That's the company we're talking about here. But here's the thing. The scoring is actually not even the most impressive part of what Barnes has been doing in this series. He also leads the entire Toronto team with 29 assists through 4 playoff games. 29. The man is averaging better than 7 assists a game in the playoffs without Immanuel Quickley in the lineup, essentially playing the role of primary point guard while also being the team's leading scorer, while also being asked to guard the opponent's best perimeter player. That is not a role, that is 3 roles simultaneously, and he's excelling at all 3 of them at the same time, which is a thing that should not be physically possible for a 23-year-old in his first real deep playoff run. But here we are. If you've been watching the Raptors regularly this season, none of this is surprising. You already knew how good he was, but if you're someone who only tunes in when the playoffs start, Scotty Barnes has been an absolute revelation.
Scotty with the stocking stuffer! Oh, Santa Claus is coming to town!
Santa, walk me through it. Let me hear it.
Oh, right down the chimney! With the big...
He's not just a rising star anymore. He is blossoming into a legitimate superstar in real time on the biggest stage against one of the better defensive teams in the Eastern Conference. There's no asterisk on this performance. He's earning every single bit of the reputation he's building right now. How Scotty broke James Harden in 2 games. This is the part of the series that doesn't get nearly enough attention, and it completely changed the momentum of this entire matchup. James Harden was sensational in the first 2 games of this series, absolutely cooking, operating at the level that reminds you why even at this stage of his career, he's still one of the most difficult offensive players to guard in the entire league. Cleveland was absolutely rolling, Toronto looked completely outmatched, and the general consensus was that this series was going to be over quickly and painlessly for the Cavaliers. Then something shifted. Starting in Game 3, Scotty Barnes was assigned as the primary defender on James Harden, and the results were fucking immediate. Harden's efficiency dropped, his scoring dropped. He had 15 turnovers over Games 3 and 4 combined. 15 for a player whose entire offensive game is built on reading defenses and making precise decisions. 15 turnovers in 2 games is a catastrophic number. That is not Harden having a bad stretch. That is a defender getting so completely into his head that the entire system breaks down. Think about what it takes to disrupt James Harden at this level. This is a future Hall of Famer, a player who has spent his entire career making defenders look like confused noobs reaching for a ball they can never quite grab. He has spent literally thousands of hours developing the hesitation, the step back, the Euro step, the pull-up, the manipulation of contact, all of it.
Harden has a chance for a 4-point play here in quarter number 1.
Get your hands in that cookie jar. And there again, you're in his space because he's left-handed.
What was wild about that, Williams is hardly reaching there.
No, but Williams is playing his left hand.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to play.
And Scotty Barnes just locked him down across back-to-back playoff games by being bigger, longer, more athletic, and smarter than what Harden wanted to deal with. That defensive assignment is the reason this series is tied 2-2 right now, instead of Cleveland up 3-1 heading into a potential closeout game. Scotty Barnes didn't just score Toronto back into the series, he defended them back into it, both sides of the ball simultaneously without Quickley to take any of the offensive load. Give the man some respect. The Brandon Ingram problem nobody wants to fully address. Okay, so now now we need to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Brandon Ingram, and why his performance in this series has been such a strange, uncomfortable thing to watch. Over a stretch of 7 straight postseason games before Game 4, Brandon Ingram scored under 20 points, 7 straight games. For a player who was acquired to be a legitimate second offensive option alongside Barnes, who was supposed to give Toronto a veteran scorer who could take over games when needed, going 7 consecutive playoff games without hitting 20 is a rough stretch. That's not a cold shooting night. That is a prolonged crisis of confidence that affects everything else about how you play. And honestly, the medical diagnosis for what Ingram has been going through has a name: the yips. We see it across professional sports. When a player who is used to doing something at an extremely high level suddenly finds that it's not working, the mind takes over in the worst way. You start overthinking, you start forcing, and then the things that used to come naturally start feeling foreign and weird and wrong. Suddenly, you're making mistakes you never made before. For Ingram over the last few games, that showed up in almost embarrassing ways. Dribbling the ball off his own foot, slipping on the court at inopportune moments, missing layups that he converts in his sleep during the regular season. It looked like a guy who was pressing so hard to get back to his normal level that the pressure itself was preventing him from getting there. That's a frustrating thing to watch from a player of his caliber, and it's genuinely difficult to solve because the fix is mental as much as it is physical. Game 4 and why it might actually matter. Here's some good news for Toronto fans though. Game 4 was probably Ingram's best performance of the entire series. It wasn't perfect. He still had moments where the efficiency wasn't quite where you'd want it, but the production was there. 23 points. And more importantly, the way he got those points mattered. He closed the first half with 10 points in 2.5 minutes at the end of the second quarter, which is exactly the kind of shot-making burst that the Raptors have been desperately waiting for him to produce. Then he did a solid job closing the game out as well. There's something psychological that happens when the ball starts going through the net again after a drought. You start seeing the game differently. The pressure lifts slightly. The hesitation that was creeping into every decision starts to fade because the evidence in front of you is saying that the shot is there, the touch is there, and you're still the player you thought you were. For Ingram, those 23 points in Game 4 might be exactly the reset his confidence needed heading into the back half of this series. And here's the other thing worth acknowledging. The Raptors have won games in this series without Ingram putting up big numbers. That actually takes some of the immediate pressure off him in a way that should be helpful. He doesn't have to single-handedly carry the offense in Game 5 to give Toronto a chance. Barnes has already proven he can be the engine. The role for Ingram right now is to be a reliable secondary option, hit his shots when they're there, and not let the mental weight of the recent slump prevent him from playing freely. But let's be real about the bigger picture here. Toronto probably cannot win this series without Ingram having at least one genuinely vintage performance before it's over. One of those games where he's clearly the best offensive player on the floor.
B.I. notorious.
I think B.I. might be trying to go for a 50. This way he's just feeling good, pulling up the 3 off the transition, not looking for anything else, and he's just
getting to his spots at will, hitting the mid-range, finishing at the rim, drawing fouls, looking like the player who can legitimately be a first option on a playoff team. One game like that could completely change what this series looks like. Shit, it might be the difference between going home in 5 and making a real run. What Toronto actually needs to happen. In the back half, let's look at where this series sits and what each team actually needs. Cleveland still has the talent advantage on paper. Donovan Mitchell is a legitimate first option who can take over games in a way that very few players in the league can.
Chance! Oh, goodness! Donovan Mitchell fired it into the Raptors. A prayer is answered here in Miami. Played by Donovan Mitchell. Can't stop till the buzzer goes off. Look at this effort by Mitchell here, and then fading away, shooting it over the tall Khalil Ware. Nothing but net for Donovan Mitchell. That is just a big-time shot. Look at this battle on the glass, and Mitchell fading away over top of a 7-foot.
Even with Harden struggling against Barnes defensively, he is still capable of a game-changing performance at any moment. Evan Mobley is one of the best defensive presences in the entire league, and he affects shots and rotations in ways that don't always show up cleanly in a box score. The Cavaliers are not a team that just falls apart because one defensive assignment is working against them. But here's what's also true. Toronto has won 5 of 7 meetings against Cleveland during the regular season. 5 of 7. This is not a matchup where the Raptors are simply overmatched or where the outcome is predetermined. They have a real formula for winning games in this series, and they've now proven it works across back-to-back games. The question is consistency. Can they execute it in hostile environments? Because the road situation is a real problem right now. The Raptors have not won a game on the road in this series yet. Everything Toronto has built through 4 games has happened at home, in front of their own crowd, with the energy of Scotiabank Arena behind them.
Off the miss. Here's Barnes the other way, spinning out of trouble. Barnes! Highlights of the night!
Going into Cleveland for Game 5 is a completely different animal. That crowd is going to be loud, the Cavaliers are going to be desperate, and Mitchell is going to be hunting for a performance that reasserts who this series belongs to. For the Raptors to win Game 5 on the road, a few things have to happen. Barnes has to keep doing what he's been doing, which sounds simple, but requires an almost superhuman level of consistent effort, given everything he's being asked to do. Ingram has to build on the momentum of Game 4 and give Toronto that secondary scoring punch that makes the offense genuinely difficult to defend. The defensive assignment on Harden has to stay aggressive and disciplined through all 4 quarters, not just the stretches where everything is going well. And maybe most importantly, the role players around Barnes have to show up. In a road environment against a desperate team, you cannot win with 1 or 2 guys. Everybody in the rotation has to be accountable and ready to make plays when the moment asks for it. Why Scottie Barnes is the most important story in the East right now. Let's zoom out for a second because I think the bigger picture here deserves some attention. Scottie Barnes is 23 years old. He is in the middle of a playoff series against a legitimate contender, playing 3 different positions worth of responsibility every single night, and he is unambiguously the best player in the series through 4 games. Not one of the best, in a series that also includes a future Hall of Famer, a perennial All-Star, and a Defensive Player of the Year. That's not an accident. That's not a hot streak that's going to cool off the moment the pressure increases. That's a player who has developed into something real and special, and the rest of the league is only now beginning to fully process it. The thing about Barnes that makes him legitimately scary as a long-term proposition is that he can affect a game in so many different ways simultaneously. He can score, he can facilitate, he can defend multiple positions, he can handle the ball under pressure, he can hit big shots in closing situations. That kind of versatility is extremely rare, and it's the reason why his ceiling as a player is genuinely difficult to project, because every time you think you figured out the upper limit of what he can do, he goes and does something in a playoff game that pushes that ceiling even higher. If Toronto advances in this series, and right now that's a real possibility with the series tied and momentum clearly on the Raptors side, Scottie Barnes is going to be one of the most talked about players in the entire league for the rest of these playoffs. And frankly, even if they don't advance, the reputation he has built over these 4 games is not going away. Teams around the league are watching, front offices are watching, players are watching. The league is being put on notice in real time, and most people are still only half paying attention. By the time the rest of the basketball world fully catches up to what Scottie Barnes actually is, it might already be too late to do anything about it. If you enjoyed watching this breakdown, hit subscribe and drop a comment below telling me whether you think the Raptors pull this off and advance past Cleveland, or whether the Cavaliers close it out at home. I want to know if you're buying what Toronto is selling right now. See you in the next one.